The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was a massive space built from shining white metal and glowing blue crystals. It was so large that clouds floated near the ceiling, and the floor was smooth like glass. Representatives from dozens of different star systems stood in circular rows around the center. Some were tall and thin like insects. Others were short and wide like rocks. They all spoke in different languages, but translation devices made sure everyone understood. In the back of the room, standing near the edge of the light, were the humans. They looked small compared to the ancient species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Luke Bennett stepped forward from a human group. He wore a simple dark uniform with no fancy medals or shiny decorations. His boots made a soft sound on the glass floor as he walked toward the central podium. He felt the eyes of hundreds of aliens on him. Some looked curious, but most looked bored. To them, humanity was new. Humans had only been traveling the stars for a few hundred years. In the eyes of the Council, that was like a single blink of an eye. Luke reached the podium and placed his hands on the smooth surface. He took a deep breath and looked out at the crowd. He needed them to listen. The void threat was coming, and everyone knew it. Luke began to speak. His voice was calm and steady. He told them that the enemy did not fight like normal armies. He said that shields and big guns would not stop the Shadow Fleet. He proposed a strategy based on movement and surprise. He suggested that humans could lead the front line because they were used to fighting against odds. He spoke about resilience and the ability to adapt quickly. He wanted to share data from recent skirmishes near Earth's border. He wanted to show that humans understood the enemy better than anyone else. He spoke for 2 minutes, and the room was quiet. For a moment, he thought they might actually listen, then a voice cut through the silence. It was sharp and loud. Linda Scott stepped out from the human delegation. She was the High Diplomat for Earth, and she looked very worried. She wore a formal suit that was too stiff for her frame. She walked quickly to the podium and stood next to Luke. She did not look at him. Instead, she looked at the High Counselors in the front row. She raised her hand to signal that Luke should stop. Luke paused and looked at her. He saw fear in her eyes. She was afraid that humans were speaking too loudly. She was afraid that standing out would bring danger to Earth. Linda spoke into the microphone. She told the Council that Commander Bennett was mistaken. She said that humans were still learning and did not understand the full scope of galactic politics. She turned to Luke and told him to sit down. Her voice was cold. She said that he was only human. She said it like it was an insult. She said that his ideas were too simple for such a complex problem. The room seemed to get colder. Luke did not move immediately. He looked at Linda, and then he looked at the aliens. He saw the way they smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone watching a child try to do adult work. The High Counselor, a being made of shifting silver liquid, spoke next. The voice echoed in everyone's mind. It agreed with Linda Scott. It said that Earth should remain in a support role. It said that humans should build ships and carry supplies, but not make plans. The other aliens nodded in agreement. Some made soft clicking sounds that meant laughter. They did not see humans as warriors. They saw them as workers. They did not know what humans were capable of when they were backed into a corner. Luke finally stepped back from the podium. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He simply nodded his head slightly. Luke walked back to the shadowed area where the rest of the humans stood. Linda stayed at the podium to apologize to the Council. She wanted to make sure Earth remained in favor. She wanted to keep the trade routes open. She thought safety came from following the rules. Luke knew better. He knew that safety was an illusion. He looked at his hands. They were steady. He thought about the secret files stored on his ship. He thought about the technology that humanity had found buried on the moon. The aliens thought humans were weak because they lacked ancient history. They did not know that humans had found something older than the Council itself. As the meeting continued, the aliens discussed boring trade agreements and borderlines. They ignored the warning signs on their screens. The void shadow was getting closer. Luke watched them from the dark. He felt a quiet anger, but it was not hot anger. It was cold and hard like steel. He knew that soon they would not have a choice. Soon they would need the power that only humans could use. Linda Scott finished her speech and walked back to the group. She looked relieved. She thought she had saved them from embarrassment. She looked at Luke and shook her head. She whispered that he needed to learn his place. Luke did not answer her. He just looked toward the exit of the great hall. The lights in the hall flickered for a second. Nobody else seemed to notice. The sensors on the outer rim were sending warning signals, but the council ignored them as glitches. Luke saw the data on his wrist pad. The enemy was already here. They were just hidden. He turned away from Linda and the others. He began to walk toward the exit door. He had work to do. The council could play their politics while the galaxy burned. He would go to the ship. He would wake up the sleeping power. Linda called after him to come back, but he did not stop. He walked out into the bright corridor alone. The time for talking was over. The time for action was about to begin. Luke walked away from the bright lights of the council station. He moved through the dark corridors of the docking bay. His boots hit the metal floor with a steady rhythm. He did not look back. He knew what he had to do. The USS Ranger waited for him in Bay 4. It was a small ship compared to the massive alien cruisers nearby. It looked old and worn. The paint was faded. To the aliens, it was just a human transport vessel. They did not know what was hidden inside the hull. They saw a cargo hauler. Luke knew it was a sleeping giant. Luke entered the airlock. The door hissed shut behind him. The air inside smelled like ozone and recycled metal. He walked to the command center. Captain Paul Gray was waiting there. Paul was a tall man with short gray hair. He wore a simple blue uniform. He looked at Luke with serious eyes. They had known each other for a long time. They had fought together in the border wars. Paul asked if the council listened. Luke shook his head. He said they think we are weak. He said they think we are children. Paul nodded. He did not look surprised. He turned to the main screen. It lit up with complex lines and codes. The light was a soft blue color. This was Project Genesis. Paul explained it again. Long ago, humans found ruins on the moon. The technology there was old. Very old. It was from a race that died before the council existed. Other species tried to use it. Their minds broke. They went insane. The energy was too strong for them. But humans were different. Their brains could connect to the machine. It was a key that only humans could turn. Scientists did not know why. Maybe it was evolution. Maybe it was luck. It did not matter. What mattered was that it worked. Paul showed the power levels. The numbers were off the charts. This was not just a weapon. It was a tool to change reality. Luke looked at the screen. The power was huge. It could change physics. It could stop the void. But it was dangerous. Paul said the system was ready. They just needed the command. Luke placed his hand on the console. The metal felt cold. Suddenly, the door opened again. The hiss of the hydraulic seal broke the silence. Linda Scott stood in the doorway. She was breathing hard. She had followed them. She looked at the screen and then at Luke. Her face was pale. She looked angry and scared. She told them to stop. She said this was against the council laws. If they activated this, Earth would be an enemy. The aliens would not fear the void. They would fear humans. Linda stepped into the room. Her heels clicked on the floor. She said she worked hard to keep peace. She said she negotiated trade deals. She said she kept the sanctions away. If Luke did this, all of that would be gone. The council would block Earth. They would cut off food and fuel. She said humanity would starve. She looked at Paul. She asked him if he was crazy. Paul did not answer. He looked at Luke. Luke looked at Linda. He saw fear in her eyes. She wanted safety. But safety was not enough anymore. He remembered her words in the council hall. Only human. She said it like it was a weakness. Now she wanted to use that weakness to keep them quiet. Luke spoke softly. He said peace was gone. The void was already here. He said the council weapons would fail. He said people would die if they did nothing. Linda stepped forward. She tried to reach for the console. She said she had authority. She was the diplomat. She represented Earth. Luke moved his hand. He typed a quick code. The screen turned red. A loud beep sounded. He locked the system. Linda could not touch it. She was locked out of the command network. Her hand hovered over the buttons. Nothing happened. She looked shocked. She asked if he understood what he was doing. She called it treason. Luke said he understood perfectly. He said he would not let humanity die to keep the aliens happy. He told her to sit down. He told her to watch. Paul stood by Luke's side. He was ready. He put his hand on the engine control. The ship hummed with energy. It was a low sound that vibrated in their chests. The hidden power began to wake up. The lights in the room flickered. Linda backed away. She realized she could not stop them. She sat in the corner chair. She crossed her arms. She watched as Luke prepared to save a galaxy that hated them. Luke looked at the stars on the main view. He thought about the Void Shadow. He thought about the families on Earth. He was not just a commander now. He was the key. He took a deep breath. He prepared to turn the key. The USS Ranger was no longer just a ship. It was the beginning of a new era. The silence on the council station did not last long. Only a few hours after the meeting ended, the alarms began to scream. The sound was loud and sharp. It cut through the quiet halls like a knife. Red lights flashed on the walls. The smooth glass floor vibrated under the feet of the running aliens. Everyone was confused at first. They thought it was a drill. They thought it was a mistake. But then the main view screen in the Great Hall changed. The image of the stars disappeared. It was replaced by darkness. The void threat had arrived. It was not a single ship. It was a fleet of shadows. They looked like holes in the universe. They did not reflect light. They absorbed it. The alien defense grid fired immediately. Bright beams of green and purple energy shot out from the station guns. They hit the shadow ships. Nothing happened. The beams vanished into the dark hulls. The aliens tried again. They fired heavier weapons. Missiles exploded against the enemy shields. The explosions looked like small fireworks. They did no damage. The shadow fleet moved closer. They began to dismantle the defense grid. Pieces of the station floated away into space. Panic spread through the Great Hall. The tall insect beings clicked their legs in fear. The rock-like beings trembled. The High Counselor made of silver liquid splashed against its container. It shouted orders, but no one listened. The technology that had protected them for thousands of years was useless. Their shields failed. The lights on the station flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, casting long shadows across the room. Linda Scott stood near the front row. She watched the screen with wide eyes. She saw a cruiser from her own alliance break in half. It drifted away, silent and dead. She felt cold. She had told the council that humans were weak. She had told them that human ideas were simple. Now she saw that their complex ideas were failing. She remembered Luke Bennett. She remembered his calm voice. He had warned them. He had said shields would not work. He had said they needed something different. She had stopped him. She had called him only human. The words echoed in her mind. She felt shame mix with her fear. The station shook again. A heavy impact rocked the floor. People fell down. Dust fell from the ceiling. The air got thin. The life support systems were failing. Linda knew they could not win this. The council was going to fall. Earth would be next. But Earth had a chance. Luke had a chance. Linda ran to a communication console. Her hands shook as she typed. She needed to contact the USS Ranger. The ship was docked nearby. It was moving away from the station. She saw it on the tactical map. It was heading toward the enemy. She prayed that Luke had not left yet. She prayed he was still there. The screen blinked. A connection was made. The face of Captain Paul Gray appeared. He looked calm. Behind him, the bridge of the Ranger was bathed in blue light. Linda asked where Luke was. Paul said he was preparing the system. Linda told them to stop. Then she stopped herself. She looked at the destruction on the main screen behind her. She changed her words. She begged for help. She said the council was falling. She said the weapons did not work. She said everyone would die. She asked Luke to save them. She admitted she was wrong. Her voice broke. She said she underestimated humanity. She said she was sorry. The screen went quiet for a moment. Then Luke stepped into the view. He looked tired but strong. He looked at Linda. He did not look angry. He looked sad. He told her that this was not about saving the council. He said the council made their choice when they dismissed them. He said he was not doing this for politics. He was doing it for life. He was doing it for the people on the station who could not fight. Luke told Paul to move the ship. The USS Ranger turned away from the docking bay. It moved toward the center of the battle. The Shadow Fleet saw the small human ship. They did not fire on it. They seemed to ignore it. They thought it was harmless. That was their mistake. Luke stood at the command center. He watched the enemy grow larger on the screen. He knew what he had to do. Linda watched the ship go. She held her breath. She hoped she had not waited too long. The station groaned under another hit. Sparks flew from the walls. The aliens huddled together. They looked at the humans now. They looked at them with hope. Luke placed his hand on the console. The real battle was about to start. The void was strong, but humanity was ready. The USS Ranger moved slowly into the center of the battle. It was a small dot against the massive Shadow Fleet. The void ships did not fire at it. They did not see it as a threat. They were wrong. Inside the ship, Luke Bennett sat in a special chair. It was made of dark metal and covered in soft pads. Wires hung from the ceiling. Paul Gray stood behind him. Paul looked at the monitors. The numbers were rising fast. The energy levels were going beyond safe limits. Paul warned Luke. He said the strain could kill him. Luke did not move. He said to proceed. He reached up and took the main cable. It had a connector at the end. It looked like a plug. Luke pressed it against the port at the base of his neck. There was a click. The connection was made. Immediately, Luke gasped. His back arched. His eyes opened wide. They were no longer brown. They were glowing white. The power flowed into him. It was not electricity. It was something older. It felt like fire in his veins. It felt like ice in his bones. Luke gritted his teeth. He did not scream. He focused his mind. He thought about Earth. He thought about the people hiding in the bunkers. He thought about the stars. The ship began to hum. The sound grew louder. It vibrated through the floor. The blue lights on the bridge turned white. The white light grew brighter. It filled the room. It passed through the walls. It passed through the hull. The USS Ranger began to glow like a small star outside. The change was instant. The white light shot out from the ship. It moved faster than light. It touched the void ships. The Shadow Fleet tried to fight. They fired their dark beams. The beams hit the white light and vanished. They were erased. The physics of the space began to change. The void ships relied on darkness. They relied on absorbing energy. But this light created energy. It created matter. The dark hulls of the enemy ships began to crack. Lines of white fire appeared on their surfaces. The cracks spread quickly. The shadow ships shook. They were being pushed. The light was not just burning them. It was rewriting them. It turned their dark metal into dust. One by one, the massive enemy vessels broke apart. They dissolved into clouds of gray ash. The ash floated away into space. The silence of the void was broken by the sound of dying machines. On the council station, Linda Scott watched the main screen. The cameras were overloaded. The image was mostly white. But she could see the shapes of the enemy fading. She shielded her eyes. The light came through the windows of the station. It was warm. It felt like sunlight. The aliens around her stopped running. They stopped screaming. They stood still. They watched the battle end. The High Counselor was quiet. The silver liquid stopped moving. Everyone knew what they were seeing. This was not normal technology. This was something ancient. Linda looked at the small human ship on the tactical map. It was the source. She remembered her words. Only human. She felt tears in her eyes. She was wrong. Humans were not weak. They were the key. The light continued to spread. It went past the station. It went past the solar system. Sensors across thousands of light-years flared. The galaxy shook. It was a physical shock wave. Dust clouds moved. Asteroids shifted orbit. The power was immense inside the Ranger. Luke held on. The pain was terrible. It felt like his mind was stretching. He could feel the ship. He could feel the light. He was the bridge between the machine and the energy. If he let go, the light would stop. If the light stopped, the void would return. So he held on. Sweat poured down his face. His hands gripped the arms of the chair. His knuckles were white. Paul watched him. Paul wanted to help. But he could not. This was Luke Burden. Paul monitored the enemy count. The screens showed 0 threats. The void fleet was gone. But Luke did not stop. He pushed the light further. He pushed it into the darkness where the enemy came from. He sealed the rift. He made sure they could not come back. The effort was too much for one man. His body trembled. His breathing was shallow. But he did not disconnect. He waited until the last shadow was gone. Only then did he allow the power to fade. The white light dimmed. The ship returned to normal blue. Luke slumped in the chair. His eyes closed. The battle was over. The galaxy was safe. But the cost was high. Paul rushed to check his friend. The silence returned to the sector. It was a peaceful silence. The kind that comes after a storm. The humans had done what the gods could not do. They had saved everyone. And they had done it alone. The silence after the battle was heavy. It was not the empty silence of space. It was the quiet of people holding their breath. The council station floated in the dark. Pieces of debris drifted around it. The shadow fleet was gone. There was nothing left but dust and cold metal. The USS Ranger hung near the station. It looked damaged. The paint was scorched. The engines were cool. Inside the ship, the medical bay was bright. Soft beeping sounds came from the machines. Luke Bennett lay on a bed. His eyes were closed. His chest moved slowly. He was alive. Paul Gray sat in a chair nearby. He looked tired. His uniform was wrinkled. He watched the monitor next to Luke. The numbers were stable. The strain had been huge. Any other person would have died. But Luke was human. He was strong. Paul stood up when he heard a knock at the door. It opened slowly. Linda Scott walked in. She looked different than before. Her stiff suit was gone. She wore simple clothes. Her hair was messy. She looked like she had not slept. She walked to the foot of the bed. She looked at Luke. She did not speak at first. She just watched him breathe. Paul asked her what she wanted. Linda said she came to see him. She said she needed to say something. Paul nodded. He stepped aside. Linda moved closer. She looked at Luke's face. She remembered the council hall. She remembered calling him only human. She remembered the way she dismissed him. Now he was the hero. She was the one who was wrong. She felt shame in her chest. It was a heavy feeling. She took a deep breath. She spoke softly. She said she was sorry. She said she was afraid. She thought following the rules would keep them safe. She was wrong. Luke opened his eyes. They were tired. But they were clear. He looked at Linda. He did not say anything. He waited. Linda continued. She said that being human was not a weakness. She said it was a strength. She said the galaxy owed them everything. She said the council was waiting for an answer. They wanted to talk. They wanted to make humans partners. They wanted to give Earth special status. Linda looked hopeful. She thought this was good news. She thought Luke would be happy. Luke sat up slowly. Paul helped him. Luke swung his legs over the side of the bed. He stood on the floor. He was shaky but steady. Luke spoke. His voice was rough. He said he did not want special status. He said humans did not want favors. Linda looked confused. She asked what he wanted. Luke said he wanted respect. He said Earth would not be a servant anymore. He said humans would not follow orders blindly. They would protect life. But they would do it their way. The council could not command them. They could only ask. Linda listened. She nodded. She understood. This was what Luke meant in the hall. Humanity was growing up. They were not children anymore. She said she would tell them. She said she would make them understand. Luke walked to the window. He looked out at the stars. The station was quiet outside. He saw alien ships moving slowly. They were watching the Ranger. They were not hostile now. They were careful. They knew what the small human ship could do. Luke turned back to Linda. He told her to go. He told her to tell the council that Earth was open for trade. But Earth was independent. Linda smiled. It was a small smile. But it was real. She said she would do it. She turned to leave. At the door, she stopped. She looked back at Luke. She said thank you. Then she walked out. Paul closed the door. He looked at Luke. He asked if they were ready to leave. Luke nodded. He said there was nothing left here. The job was done. Paul went to the console. He began the startup sequence. The ship hummed. The lights came on. The engines warmed up. Luke walked to the bridge. He sat in the command chair. It felt familiar. He looked at the main screen. The station grew smaller as they moved away. The stars stretched out in front of them. There was a whole galaxy out there. It was big and dangerous. But humans were ready for it. The USS Ranger moved into the dark. It left the station behind. The council watched them go. They did not try to stop them. They knew better. Linda stood on the observation deck. She watched the ship jump to light speed. It vanished in a flash of blue. She turned to the counselors. They were quiet. They looked at her. She stood tall. She told them that humans were not subjects. She told them they were guardians. The counselors nodded. They accepted it. They had no choice. The power that shook the galaxy was human power. Luke leaned back in the chair. He closed his eyes for a moment. He felt the vibration of the ship. It was a good feeling. It meant they were moving forward. Paul set the course for Earth. There was much to do. There were repairs to make.